Heavenly Father, today we put on the full armor to protect us against attack. We put on the belt of truth to protect against lies and deception. We put on the breastplate of righteousness to protect our hearts from the temptations. We put the gospel of peace on our feet to walk in your light, peace, and freedom with the Holy Spirit. We rebuke anxious thoughts. We take up your shield of faith for protection to block and destroy all the darts and threats thrown at us by the enemy. We put on the helmet of salvation to cover our minds and thoughts, reminding us that we are children of a mighty King. We are forgiven, set free, saved by the blood of Jesus. We take up the sword of the Spirit, your living word, that has the power to demolish strongholds and is sharper than any double-edged sword. We come to you, Lord, in prayer daily. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
What's up, you guys? Welcome to The Imagination. I'm your host, Emma, and this week I am so excited to welcome back for a second time, father, entrepreneur, Navy SEAL veteran, author of the incredible books Transformed and Chameleon, founder of Keh-jo Brand apparel and the 8th Film Productions, film producer, writer, director of The Unexpected, Hollywood actor, and jack of all trades and master of all of them, Remi Adeleke. A true riches to rags and rags to riches story, Remi calls his life the true coming to America story. Born into African royalty in a small country in Western Africa, his picture-perfect life took a devastating turn after circumstances surrounding the death of his beloved father forced his family to uproot to America, which began a life filled with adversity and struggles. After years of running the streets out of the Bronx, New York, Remi knew he needed a change and enlisted in the U.S. Navy in 2002 and began his inspirational and transformational journey from streets to SEALs, where he worked in human intelligence. His debut book, Biography, Transformed, a Navy SEAL's unlikely journey from the throne of Africa to the streets of the Bronx to defying all odds, outlines the inspirational and personal story of Remi's life and how he overcame insurmountable odds and rose to prominence in literally everything he has set his mind to, including the military and breaking out into Hollywood. His newest project, a fictional follow-up to Transformed called Chameleon, is a fictional novel loosely based on his own experiences as a SEAL. In Remi's own words, it's a fictional extension of my memoir, Transformed. All the things that I couldn't talk about in Transformed, I fictionalized and characterized this fictional world with fictional characters and fictional events in order to be able to tell more of my story, but in a fictional way. Chameleon is a brilliant piece of literature, and I'm so excited to have Remi join us today to tell us all the details of his new book. The first time Remi was on, we did a deep dive into his short film directorial debut called The Unexpected. The Unexpected, which debuted almost a year ago, last September 30th, on YouTube exclusively, was a fantastic film based off a true story that takes us deep into the world of human trafficking and specifically organ harvesting. The film very boldly and brilliantly shines a bright light on these important topics that very few in the entertainment industry have had the courage to feature in movies, TV, or film. I highly recommend you all take some time to go back and watch his last podcast episode and watch this incredible film because it's extremely well done, and the attention to detail in explaining how human trafficking functions like a business, cartel, intelligence operation, and an industry all in one cannot be overstated. It was hands down the best film I've seen to date, bringing awareness to these taboo topics. I'll have all the links in the show notes for you guys to find and click on easily. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to give a reminder that if you are a survivor or whistleblower who wants to share your story on this podcast or who wants to share any information privately with me, you can now email me at imagineabetterworld2020@gmail.com. Send me a briefing of who you are and how I can support you, whether it's podcasting or sharing information. And I also just started a Substack that you can support at www.emmacatherine.substack.com, where I'll be doing weekly recaps and insights on my podcast and using this as a place to publicly journal my journey as an advocate for our children. All my social, email, and project links can also be found in the show notes. And as always, I'm so grateful for all your support. So you guys, without further ado, please help me in welcoming my guest this week, anti-human trafficking advocate, voice for the voiceless, content creator, artist inspiration, man of God, and someone who literally embodies being the change we wish to see in the world, the one, the only, Remi Adeleke. Remi, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Hey, Emma, thank you so much for having me on. It's such a pleasure to be back with you. And thank you for always being a blessing and helping to support what I have going on.
You have your feet and hands in so many different things, and it's an honor to support you. There's very few people willing to have the conversations that you are, and doing it so boldly in a place such as Hollywood, and doing it in ways that are very, very creative and that kind of skirt the lines that other people start walking away from. So it's really awesome getting to have you on, because I think as artists grow up, they're going to look to people like you, to find different ways that they can get really important messages out in ways that they may not have been able to figure out following the traditional models and maybe traditional directors that don't talk about these things. So I love getting to talk to you and supporting you, and just really appreciate all the work that you're doing.
Thank
Um,
you.
I wanted to start just because you do so much, and I want people to understand a little bit more of your background, because it's so interesting how things were in Nigeria versus how they are in America. And I'd love if we could start by you opening and talking about the culture of Nigeria and the the I guess importance that they put around education, and people having their even whenever they go to college, having multiple things that they're doing, because
Yeah.
I think that that's something really special that you bring to the table. It's really inspirational seeing everything that you do, and I think people understanding what it's like in other countries versus here can maybe hopefully light a fire under people who aren't doing a lot and maybe aspire to.
Yeah, no, for sure. So in Nigeria, Nigeria is very, very rich in resources. You have gold, you have tons of minerals, you have oil, you have natural gas, cocoa, you name it, Nigeria has it. And but unfortunately, there's been and it continues to be so much corruption in the government. Obviously, there's corruption in every government, but it's very systemic, from the top all the way down to the bottom. And because of the corruption, the middle class has been completely cut out. So all you have are, a lot of poor people, and then you have, a good number of rich people. And, it doesn't matter how hard you work in Nigeria. You could create businesses. You can, even rise up through the ranks, go to med school. Like, it's really hard for the fruits of your labor to pay off. And so Nigerian parents, they focus a lot on trying to get their kids to either the UK or the US, or themselves moving to the UK and the US. And then, they put a huge emphasis on education. They put a huge emphasis on, hey, be to school early, you better get A+, like an A- is subpar, like you have to get an A+, like, better not get in trouble in school. Like, education is absolutely everything. So much so that a bachelor's degree is worthless to a Nigerian family. Like a bachelor's degree is equivalent to a GED. So that's why you see a lot of Nigerians here in America, they have master's degrees, they have PhDs. Most of my Nigerian friends are either doctors, lawyers, engineers, or super, super successful entrepreneurs. They started like very successful tech companies or other type of consulting firms or businesses. And, that drive comes from this idea that, in Nigeria, again, you can work as hard as you want to, but it's not going to pay off. But here in America, if you bring that same work ethic to America, it doesn't matter where you start, you will rise to the top of your field. You will rise and be super successful and wealthy. And, so for Nigerian parents, it's simple. 1 + 1 = 2. Come to America, crush school, be rich. And so that's a huge emphasis. And it leads to a lot of Nigerian kids wanting to diversify, not kids, but kids turning into adults, like just having this natural inclination to diversify and do multiple things and not just focus on one field. For example, I have a friend of mine who's Nigerian, and he's a heart surgeon, but he's also a movie producer. As a matter of fact, I met him because he was one of the producers on the Plane movie that I did with Gerard Butler. And when I met him on set, like we got to talk. Well, actually, we went to dinner one night, and we got to talking. And I was like, "Dude, it's so cool meeting you. That you're a producer on this, and you're Nigerian, this and that." Like, so I was like, "What's your schedule look like day to day?" He was like, "Man, honestly, he's like, I'm a heart surgeon. Like, this is just like something I do on the side, So that's part of our culture, to be hustlers, and I don't mean that in a negative way. but to, really hustle and grind and, get the best out of life, because essentially what you put into it is what you'll get out, and if you don't put in anything, you're not going to get anything out. So, yeah.
So fascinating. And one of the things I think is so neat about what you've done is you have created things from your heart. You're not working just some 9-to-5 job for somebody else and hustling for other people. And not
Yeah.
that there's anything wrong with that, but I love that you've taken this opportunity and that natural determination and motivation that you have, and you've created things that are passion projects and you've made them so successful. I think it's so neat to see that, because there's not a lot of people that have the courage to do that, and it's sad because, like you said, here in America, somebody like you could come over and see a world of opportunity, and people that have lived here their whole life are so scared to step out of this, this comfort that they live in.
No, 100%. Yeah, it's like I was talking on a podcast with an NFL player yesterday, and we were talking about that public education system here in the States, and it doesn't set up kids to be entrepreneurs, to know how to manage money. It sets them up to learn a specific system so that way they could just get a regular job, and then that way they could, continue the cycle of helping to, do the labor jobs that run society, which is necessary, but it doesn't set people up to do the stuff like, Elon Musk or, Zuckerberg or these other guys. And when you look at a lot of these very successful entrepreneurs, businessmen, and women, like some of them never graduated high school. Like I know, Quentin Tarantino, he dropped out in the 9th grade. And look how successful he is. And you look at people like, Elon Musk, I think he dropped out of high school, if my memory serves me right. And then you look at Mark Zuckerberg and all of these Steve Jobs, like a lot of them dropped out in college. And they are billionaires. And then the list goes on and on and on of very successful people who've been assets to society and created technology or systems or services that have revolutionized the world. And they weren't educated in the typical system. And maybe they started out, but they realized, hey, this is not going to help me do what I really want to do. It's not helping me. It's actually, making me more deficient in what I really want to do. And it's taking time away from what I really want to do. And I can focus my time into this technology or this service and, 10 years from now, be a billionaire and have created something amazing. Or I could go the typical route and stay in high school and then go to college and then get a regular job, and somebody else does what I could do. So I try to also live by that, where I don't like to ride the wave. I like to go against the grain and do different things and try to figure out different ways of doing different things in creative ways. For example, like with the unexpected, short film, as I mentioned on the last podcast, like I wanted that to be a TV show, and, nobody would give me the money to make it into a TV show. And then finally I said, screw it, I'll put up my own money and I'll just make a short film. And, I taught myself how to write and I taught myself how to direct, and I did the short film. And now that short film is going to be a feature film. And the script for the feature film is already done. It's already done. It's already turned into the producers. And thank you. And, we have financing for the film. It's going to be like a $35 million budgeted film. And so, I had to go a different route. I couldn't go the traditional way. I had to go like around the corner and, through another door by creating the short film, and then people watching it and they're like, wow, this is really great. I want more. And then using that, and then other things that I've had to use, leveraging those things to now get a movie made opposed to just a TV show. So, there's so many different ways, as the saying goes, there's a million different ways to skin a cat, and I think that we've just been conditioned for the typical way that we've learned from our parents and school, and do your 4 years in high school, do your 4 years in college. If you're not going to go straight into the workforce, then get your master's and then apply for a job, do an internship, and then start out entry level, get a certain salary, gradually work your way up, pay into your 401k, and then before you know, and then as you're working, pay off your pay off your student loans. And then before you know it, like, you know, you're 50 years old, finally paid off your student loans. You got a house, and now, you know, you're 10 years from retirement, and you're just counting down the days. Like, when's that retirement coming in? And I never want to live that way, where like I'm counting down the days to a retirement so I don't have to do what I don't like to do anymore. I love the opportunity that I have to be able to create my own path and say, you know what, every day I love doing what I'm doing. I love getting up and being part of a group that tells stories. I love storytelling, and whether it's through book, whether it's through coming on podcasts and speaking on your podcast, whether it's, you know, TV shows, whether it's movies, and I get to do what I love every single day. And I want to be able to do what I love if I follow the traditional patterns.
That's super, you know, it's motivating watching that, because like I said, there's so many people that I think just desire that with all their heart. But like you said, they're stuck at a job working overtime, then they go home to a family. And by the time they finally get time for themselves, they're exhausted, you know? So I think just seeing somebody like you came from literally nothing coming over here, you know, went against all odds, all statistics in every way, even in the military. You overcame so many things that, you know, you shouldn't have been able to, given the circumstances, you know. And I think that's just such a motivational and inspirational story for people to see, that no matter where you're at, you can always, you know, take 5 minutes of your week, start there, you know, or just do something different with your life. Try something, go apply for something that you've always wanted to, and you really live that to your core. And I think it's awesome. Now, I want to go back to the unexpected and talk about that for a minute, because my channel has grown a little bit since last time that you were on. And that film is still just, it impacted me so much. I still watch it every so often, and I constantly show it and send it to people, because it just does such an awesome job explaining something that I don't feel other films have done justice to. You know, with any type of human trafficking film that's out there, you know, you think about the Taken model, where you have this really, you know, this violent event that happens, and it's so obvious, it's quick, it's random, you know, and so people take that to heart, and they don't worry about human trafficking happening in their life, because they don't see that it's happening in front of them, even in their own communities, whether it's human trafficking, organ trafficking, because it doesn't look like what they see in typical Hollywood films. So I'd love if you could talk about the unexpected, what inspired you to do it, and just give people listening sort of an overview of this film, because I really want to push everybody to go watch that still, because it is a big topic that I talk about on this podcast. And like I said, it's my personal favorite film that I've ever seen that's touched on it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you know, in 2018, I'm trying to 2018, I was working on, I was volunteering with a human trafficking nonprofit. And then I saw some bad things, was exposed to some crazy stuff. And then when I came back from that trip, I landed in Miami, and I had some missed phone calls from Michael Bay's producing partner, because he wanted me to consult on a film called Six Underground, which was eventually shot. I eventually worked on it as a consultant. It was eventually shot, and then it came out on Netflix. And when he called me after I landed, it's a lot more to the story, but in short, after that phone call, it was like these two worlds collided: this kind of human trafficking world that I had been working in, and this world of film and TV that I had been working in. And I was just like, man, like, it would probably, like, I think I could have a bigger impact by converging the two, and, you know, telling a story that will impact, you know, more people, so that way more people can get engaged. Because, as you know, human trafficking is a global issue, and a global issue requires a global response. It's not going to, you know, yes, it's great that there's a bunch of different nonprofits out there that, you know, do rescues and do aftercare and do education and all that stuff. That's all needed. But in my opinion, it's a drop in the bucket as it relates to the global issue, right? And so I felt like, you know, by making a film, I can get more people engaged, and then getting more people engaged, then we could fight this thing head on, right? And so as I mentioned earlier, I wrote a treatment. I figured, you know what, this would be, let me start this out as a TV series. So I wrote a treatment for a TV series and did a lot of research. And essentially the opening of the TV series of the pilot episode was the short film. So the entire series was going to be told somewhat not necessarily in reverse, but it was going to open with the end result and then go back, you know, weeks later and work our way up to that end result, you know. And that was it was called The Unexpected, and my agent took it out to multiple networks and studios, and you know, the reoccurring message was, hey, this is a great storyline, it's cool, but we're not, nobody, like, it was during COVID, so you know, it's like, hey, you got COVID, you got all this stuff going on, and the last thing people want to do after they've been dodging COVID and all this bad news all day is watch a show like this. And my pushback was like, well, you know, obviously I'm not going to have every episode where it's somber and sad and all of this stuff. Like, it's like, I know that I have to put, like, you know, the pill in the donut. And so it's still going to be entertaining and you're going to still get that entertainment value. But at the same time, it's going to be educational. And again, nobody wanted it. So fast forward to, let's see, we're in 2023 right now, right? So I want to say 2021, May of 2021, I was in my office and I was watching this YouTube video from this YouTube channel called Film Courage. And there was this guy, this director was being interviewed, not a big director, just like a, you know, director trying to make his way into business. And he's done a couple small projects. And he said something that really resonated with me. He was like, you know, you got to stop waiting for permission to go make something. You got to stop waiting for somebody to give you the money and waiting. And he wasn't saying it he was just saying that that's what he had learned being in the business, was that he couldn't keep waiting on somebody. He had to essentially go do it himself. And then if a studio came along or if a network came along and helped him make his film, then great. But it's not going to get done unless you put the effort in and get it done. And that really resonated with me. And that's when I said, you know what, he's right. So I literally walked right next door. I walked out my office and I walked into my assistant, Brad. You've been communicating with him for the podcast. I walked into his office and I was like, dude, we're making a movie. And he was like, what are you talking about? I was like, I'm going to make this unexpected film. He was like, how? Where are you going to start? I was like, dude, I'm going to go write this script right now. And I got a buddy out in Kansas City that's been trying to get me to bring film projects out there. So I'm going to fly out there and we're going to make a movie. He's like, how much time are you going to be? When? I was like, I don't care. It's going to be done like in the next 3 weeks. He's like, that's crazy. So I went and I wrote the script. I called up my buddy in Kansas and I was like, yo, I told him about what I was trying to do. And he was like, hey, I'm all in. He was like, we got access to actors. We got access to, you know, my business partner's dad is a former chief of police. So he has access, you know, he can get his permits really quick. And he was like, let's do this. And I flew out there, I want to say a few days later for a tech scout, scouted out different locations. I did a social media post to try and find a private jet. Because that was a big part of the script. We needed a private jet in order to make it authentic, and we needed the right kind of private jet that can get from, you know, Africa, that can get from, you know, the Middle East to South America and South America to the US. Like, and I had somebody that wanted to donate a private jet, but it was not the right size. It was a small private jet that realistically, there's no way it could have gotten from where we needed to go, start to where we needed to go. And yeah, I just put the pedal to the metal. Like every day was like nonstop, you know, finding actors, casting actors. And we pulled it together like 2 weeks, you know, 2 weeks from watching that video, we were on set shooting the movie. And it was hard. It was hard, and it was, you know, and we had a lot of long days and long nights. But we got it done, you know, and that was how it all came together. And then we had a long post-production because I wanted to make sure that everything was right from a coloring standpoint, VFX, sound design, score, all of that stuff. So the hardest part was the VFX because, we had to find a guy out in India actually to do the special effects on the film. And, that cost like $4,000. But he was great. He was fantastic at what he did. And, I'm sure you won't even notice some of the stuff that's in the film that's real and some of the stuff that was there that's not there anymore because we had to do some special effects on it. And so that was kind of how the film came together. And then in in September of last year, 2022 is when we connected, and that's when I decided, what, I think it's ready. We submitted it to a few film festivals, but I was like, what, it's ready to put this out. And, the goal of this film wasn't to win awards. It wasn't to, wasn't to even get a movie made. It was literally to breed awareness. And we put it out there, and, it's gotten a lot of eyes on. And like, I literally just got an email right now. I'll pull up and read it to you. I'm still getting these messages every day. This is from YouTube. So this is from the page, and it says, Tawana Walker, they just posted this comment on it. No matter the wealth of the individuals, do they all stop to think of their loved ones disappearing? How can somebody be a part of this kind of thing? Thank you for bringing it to light. Like, that person just made that comment at 8:50 this morning. Right. And so, like, to this day, every day, I'm still getting messages from people saying, wow, like, that was eye-opening. Like, as a matter of fact, I think that was the message I got yesterday. Let's see. Yeah, the message I got yesterday. I had to watch this. I had to watch this again. Light is the best sanitizer. That was yesterday. Another one from yesterday. What an eye-opener. Scary face emoji, right? So it's like, and that's what it's about. And at the end of the day, it was just about putting it out there. And if one person watches it, and if one person is like impacted by it and says, you know what, I'm going to go, donate to a human trafficking nonprofit, or I'm going to go volunteer with a human trafficking nonprofit, or I'm going to be more vigilant, or I'm going to, go learn the signs and symptoms of a traffic victim, like, then my job was done. Because I don't know how many views on there. I think it's close to like 50,000 views now, but of those 50,000 views, how many people maybe did something that they wouldn't have done that has saved somebody's life? And if one person's life was saved, then the film's done this job. So, and you can't put a value on that, so yeah, it's an important film that focuses on organ harvesting. Is, when people hear the term human trafficking, their minds, at least my belief is, and from what I've seen, is their minds just go to sex trafficking. But human trafficking is just, is a blanket term. There's so many different, subsets of human trafficking. You got organ harvesting, you got sex trafficking, labor, forced marriage, and the list goes on and on. And I decided to focus on organ harvesting because that's a topic that a lot of people don't talk about. And I think it's because a lot of people don't know how to talk about it. And I think they don't know how to portray it in a way where it's palatable, because in some of these cases we're talking about people dying. Like, there was a story that came out, let's see, I want to say May of this year. I posted on my social media, or maybe it was February, but this woman from Mexico, she found love on this dating site, and found this guy in Peru, and fell in love and flew out to Peru. And he essentially killed her, took her organs, and sold her organs on the black market, and her body parts washed up on the Peruvian beach. And that was all over. That was international news. And he got caught because he was trying to sell her organs on the black market. I think he was trying to sell them on social media or something like that. And he was a med school student. So, again, like, that's a tough story to hear, which means that to try to tell that in a film is tough. And so people just don't do it. People just don't do it, There was another story that came out earlier this year as well, of this girl who went down to Dominican Republic, and she went to go get a tummy tuck. And, after she gets her plastic surgery done, she comes back home and she's not feeling well. And she goes to the doctor, and the doctor, long story short, runs all of these tests, and finally he can't figure it out. So finally he just does an MRI. And then after the MRI, he's like, hey, you have one kidney. And she's like, no, I have 2 kidneys. And so apparently when she went down to DR to go get tummy tuck, this surgeon took one of her kidneys out when she was under and sold it on the black market. So yeah, so it's all of these stories that, you know, are even, they're starting to come out more, which is good, because I have gotten those comments on not many, like a handful of people say like, that's not real. Like, people don't get their organs taken. Like, I can't believe that this happens, but it does happen. And now, like, we're actually, you know, there's more reporting on it, which makes, I mean, Vice did a whole story on organ harvesting down in Mexico. Who else? There's a TV show on Nat Geo called Trafficked. And there's the host, I can't remember her name, but she did a whole episode on organ harvesting, you know, organs being sold on the black market. So like, I think now it's like, and I'm not saying this because of my short film, but now there's so much more information out there. You couple that with the short film, then now it makes it more believable. But that's why I made the film, was because I wanted to show people this side of humanity, which is very evil. And thank you again for pushing it out there. And I hope that, you know, people who are listening will go watch it and share it. I don't get paid from it. As a matter of fact, I invested close to $150,000 of my own money to make the film. And so I don't get paid, you know, from it. If you go watch it, my payment is you watch it, you get inspired, and then maybe you share it and somebody gets learns more about it, and they engage in this fight in some way.
That's what I loved so much about it, was you brought the reality to it. I think people have just this disconnect to human trafficking in general, where it seems like, how I was saying with Taken, that it's just these crazy people that have really no motive, that they're just sort of psychopaths and they're cutting people up, you know, and maybe, and it's not really told the whole story of, you know, what happens from point A to point B and where are these organs going, and realizing that this is a multi-billion-dollar business, and that there's people from government officials to doctors that benefit from this, that, you know, organs can be hundreds of thousands of dollars, and like the whole body in general is so profitable when you think about taking pieces out and selling them, and what one person can make off one human body, you know. And your film shows the organization behind it, and how these are very smart people, you know, very resourceful people, you know, and that this is a cartel, essentially. This is a very organized effort. And how you were saying, between countries, even, you know, there's intel talking on black markets between countries, you know, organizing these really, you know, these very covert operations, and, you know, getting paid very handsomely for it. And I appreciate that you did it that way, because like I said, this happens in our own neighborhoods and communities, hospitals, you know, there could be doctors in our own community participating in this, and we don't understand as a society what human trafficking looks like, and that it's very rarely these very, you know, random violent events that just happen all of a sudden and don't have any organization or rhyme or reason. And your film does a really good job just portraying, you know, the type of people involved, the operations, and just how widespread it is. And I'm so happy that it's been received well. I was going to ask that, is there anything else that you want to talk about with, you know, you said it's going to be turned into a feature film, but, you know, has there been any other impacts that you have received from, you know, having this film come out?
No, just you know, people watching it and commenting and saying how much it's impacted them. There was a guy who watched it who works for the Department of Homeland Security, and he sent it to his bosses, and they watched it and they were impacted by it as well. And I know he was trying to figure out a way to get it on their website, but you can't put outside links on the Department of Homeland Security website. And so, but yeah, the biggest thing that's come out of it, one, is that people have been impacted. And then two, you know, it got picked up to be a film. But you mentioned something I want to touch on, like about the intricacies of these organ harvesting trades, and then also how it's multi, you know, it crosses borders. So on a short Vice piece that's on YouTube, the trafficker was mentioning how he's had created partnerships with healthcare workers in the US, right? And so when healthcare workers in the US when they get information about somebody that's on a donors list, like they connect you know, the healthcare worker connects the person that, not the donor, but somebody who needs a donor, who needs a kidney or whatever, connects that person with this trafficker. So it does cross countries, and it is very it's very intricate. These people are very smart. It is an enterprise. As a matter of fact, I can't remember. I'm pretty sure I released this interview after we did our podcast, but I interviewed this guy who was trafficked from Venezuela. Let me back up. He received a email. I can't remember if it was an email blast or a pamphlet saying, hey, come to this particular part of Mexico. And if you come to this particular part of Mexico, we'll be able to get you into the US border, because it's easy to get into the border now. And so he flew from Venezuela to Colombia, and then flew from Colombia to this particular part of Mexico. He was abducted by the same people who told him, hey, come here. And he was essentially driven to this house out in the middle of nowhere. And in that house, there were, you know, men, women, and children from not just from South America, but from other parts of the world, who they were essentially lured there as well. And they were trafficked. They were used for sex trafficking. The girls, the women, the kids were used as mules to, you know, because they could fit through those tunnels to move drugs into the U.S. And the men were used for other means. And so, you know, again, that just speaks to how smart these people are, and how, you know, they are, you know, they're organized, and it is run, and the cartel is involved. I mean, they realize that it's very lucrative, and it's safer for the most part to dabble in, you know, human trafficking than it is in drug trafficking, you know, and moving drugs at times. So and that's, again, going back to the film, I really wanted to portray that. I didn't want to, you know, water it down, and I didn't want to, you know, have this film where the bad guys, so to speak, are you know, dirty, stupid looking, you know what I mean, criminals, because they're a lot more than that.
100%. And I like how you were saying with, you know, hoping that people watch. I want to encourage everybody to please watch it. It's so well done, and it's short. It's, you know, about a half hour, a little bit over that, but it really does dial in a lot. It brings a visual to a lot of the stuff that you hear on this podcast from, you know, human trafficking victims who are saying how organized their abuse was, you know, and it can be really hard from the outside to understand that, especially when a story is told fast. But when you're watching this short film, it does a really great job of helping orchestrate how this industry works and functions, the who's, when's, where's, what's, why's, and it gives you a good overview of, you know, of human trafficking. And although Remi's film does focus on organ trafficking and harvesting, this applies to all forms of trafficking. You know, it's very rarely these, you know, really sudden events. It's very patient. How Remi was saying, somebody that, you know, dated somebody online, like, that's the audacity that somebody had to go through a relationship with somebody, earn their trust, fly them out. You know, this didn't just happen suddenly. You didn't pick a random person. This was a very deliberate, patient thing that somebody accomplished, and, you know, won her over, and she went and, you know, had a really horrific fate. So I encourage you guys to all go watch that, and I'm going to link it below in the show notes. All you got to do is click on it, and please watch it and support it and share it. Like Remi said, you never know whose life you can save just by sharing something with somebody. And honestly, I like things like that because it takes the pressure off of us having to explain it. It can be hard to explain something to you that maybe we're not super familiar with. So having this film, you can share it with somebody and say, look, I don't feel qualified or comfortable talking about it yet. I don't know a lot about it. But here's somebody that does, and who put together something that does, you know, speaks on it better than I could. So I encourage you guys to all go watch it and share it. And then to pivot a little bit, Remi, so you have a new book out that is going, by the time this interview comes out, it'll actually be a film also that people can watch. So I'll have that link.
Short film.
Yes. Let's talk about your new book. Let's talk about the short film. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd love for you to maybe start off talking about your journey as a Navy SEAL, you know, and what you were involved in. That way the conversation about the book can help make sense as to how it's a fictional depiction of actually you. This is based off of loosely based off your life story.
Yeah. So, you know, when I got into the SEAL teams or got to my SEAL team, I was exposed to a section of the community that I didn't know existed. It's called human, which stands for human intelligence. And essentially all it is learning how to collect intelligence from people or task people to collect intelligence for you. And so I was blessed to go to different, intelligence gathering courses. And then, and that also these courses required a lot of writing. So it wasn't just like you get to go, do the cool spy stuff, but you had to, do a lot of writing. And so, fast forward to when I got overseas, that was a big part of my job. I was a medic, but I was primarily a human guy. So I would, meet with sources in the CIA, they call them assets. In policing, they're known as informants, but I would meet with sources. They, collect intelligence and then, write reports and send those reports up the chain of command. And hopefully we would be able to go on a mission. And so that was kind of when the idea for Chameleon came to me because I was like, wow, like there's never been a protagonist quite like this with my background coming from Nigeria, growing up in the Bronx, and and having to be a different person with every source that I was working with, because I had to be a chameleon. I had to be one way with one person because of their inclinations or their likes and dislikes or their personality. And then I had to be a different person with another source, depending on his personality, and then another source and another source. And I had to be a different person when I was, briefing, my higher ups and trying to, convince them to go on a mission based off of this intelligence. And so that's when the title Chameleon came to me. As a matter of fact, in my first book, Transform, which is my memoir, there's a chapter in the book called Chameleon. And I'm, and that's the chapter where I'm actually doing the source handling and stuff like that. And so it had always been there. So fast forward to, after I got out of the military and in 2018, when I was working on 6 Underground, I said, you know what, I'm gonna write this script. I'm going to just write the script Chameleon. I wrote the screenplay and, it was loosely based off of me, but it wasn't like the main character at that point didn't come from Nigeria like I did. And, he came from New York City, but there were some things that weren't fully fleshed out. And so a few months later, well, I want to say about 2 years later, actually, my agent shot the screenplay and a major producer picked up the rights to the screenplay. I went through about a year of rewrites on the script. And then a buddy of mine who worked for the CIA, he's an author now, he read the script and he was like, listen, Remi, this would be an awesome book series. You should consider doing this as a book series. And so I didn't want to do it because I had just finished having back-to-back writing assignments from my book to Chameleon, and Last Shall Be First to Slave Stealers to doing that rewrite on Chameleon. And it was just like, I wanted a break, but he really convinced me to do it. And I did. But I allowed him to take it out, and he took it out, and a bunch of publishers wanted it. And then it was in the writing process after I signed on with HarperCollins William Murrow that I was really able to flesh out the backstory of the character, because I had the space. In a film, in the screenplay, you only have 120 pages. In a book, you have a lot of pages where you can really, go deep. And so that's when I was able to, in the writing process of the book, that's when I was really able to really build out the character's backstory. As a matter of fact, there's flashback chapters in the book, and those flashback chapters take place when Kali, our lead character, is in Nigeria as a kid. He's a kid in Nigeria, and while he's in Nigeria, we see his dad and his mom, and his dad is in the Nigerian mafia. So we have that drama there, and his mom is trying to get him out of the Nigerian mafia. And it's all of these cool things that are going on. And then we flash back to the main chapters, and we're back to the action and all of that stuff. So the Nigeria piece is very closely resembles my story. The New York piece resembles my story. And then some of the stuff that he did is, resembles my story and some of the things that I did. And that's Chameleon. That's kind of how it all came about. And you know, I did the audiobook read. So just like I did the audiobook read for Transform, so people will be able to hear me acting out all of these different characters. And about back in June, same thing. And that happened with the unexpected. I got contacted by this YouTube channel, and they were like, "Hey, we want to do some video content with you." And I was just like, I was like, "Yeah, I'm in." And then like one day I was laying in bed Sunday morning, and I was like, "Why don't I just, you know, why does it have to just be that? You know, why does it have to just be I go on and do an interview? Like, why can't it be I go on and we go make a movie?" And so I reached out to him. I was like, "Hey, I know that this is a crazy idea, but how about we do a short film?" And just like with the unexpected, you know, they said, "Yeah, let's do it." And like 6 days later, not even Sunday, I pitched them the idea. Friday, I was in Nashville, Tennessee. You know, I wrote the script like on like Monday and Tuesday, and then Friday I was in Nashville, Tennessee, and we were shooting the first scenes, you know, for the short film. So, and you know, I wanted to do it because, you know, when people read a book, you know, it's like you can't really, you can visualize it, but you can't visualize absolutely everything. And I thought it would be cool to have a companion piece that goes along with the book, so that, you know, as people are reading the book or about to read the book, or maybe they finished the book, they're able to watch the film and see the same characters and hear the same characters that they read about in the book, and, you know, and see it all kind of play out. And that was kind of how this idea came together. And so yeah, it's books out right now. You can get it, as you can see up here. You can get it on Amazon, and the short film will be out tomorrow, and I'm super excited about it. We've done like a month post-production on it. I think it's amazing, and it's more action than the unexpected, but it's a fun film for sure.
The thing that I think is interesting, first of all, I love the name Chameleon. I think that's so, it just sounds badass. You know, it's perfect for this. And I love that, you know, that you're loosely basing this off of your own experiences. I could tell, I read the audiobook and I could tell while you were reading it, just, you know, how close it was to your heart. You know, it didn't feel like you reading pages. It actually felt like you living the experiences in a way. So you can tell that this really comes from your own experiences, from your heart. And this is truly a passion project for you to, like you said, be more expressive and put things that you maybe couldn't put in a memoir into a fictional thing, and build off things. You know, I'm sure whenever you're going through these really high profile, high stress situations where you're in danger, your brain's going all different places, you know, and I feel like you were able to pull from that and take some of the, you know, what if scenarios that could have happened and actually apply them and create a story based off of it, which I think is neat. And with you saying Chameleon, it brings me back to, you know, what you're doing right now with creating films and being an actor, you know, and being able to pull those different almost traits or skills that you learned from the military and bring them into real life. That's not something I think a lot of veterans or people who, you know, get out of the military and come back in the real world, a lot of people that were in the military struggle with being a regular civilian again, you know, and what do I do now? I'm not in battle. I'm not in these high stress situations all the time. I don't have to constantly look over my shoulder. You know, what do I do with my life now? You know, and it seems like you were able to take some of the things that made you shine in the military, being a chameleon, and you were able to take that in a sense and apply it to a different sector of your career path, which, you know, is acting.
Yeah, and but you know, I always tell people that acting, I would say like around 2018, it became my film school. So I didn't look at acting as like, oh, I want to be an actor. Like, to be honest with you, I have no desire to be an actor. I don't like acting. I don't like doing it, but it's my film school. And it gives me an opportunity to watch directors, because that's how historically, that's how I learned. I'm not good at learning in a school setting. You know, I got my bachelor's, I got my master's and all that. But the way I learn the best is by actually doing and seeing. And so, you know, when I'm able to get on these sets with these big directors and these big actors, like I watch and observe. I watch how the directors give a direction. Like I watch how the actors are receiving that information. Even as an actor, like I have a good sense of, I've been able to learn, the best way to communicate information because I've been on set and I've needed the director to communicate to me how he or she wants me to pivot in a scene or do something differently. And so, being on set as an actor has essentially become my film school. And that's what helped me make the unexpected. I would say, that was a huge asset in me making that film. There's no way I could have made that film without all of the movie sets that I've been on up until that point, and TV sets that I've been on, and the learning experiences that I was able to get from being on those sets. And even now with the new short film, like a lot of that has come from, I was able to take from what I learned, the mistakes I made on Unexpected, but also what I learned working on movies, between having completed the Unexpected and now. And so I have no desire to act. I just see it as my film school.
Well, you're a brilliant actor. You've been in a bunch of movies now, and you can tell that you have a lot of fun, and it's awesome that you're able to do that and then take that and create something from it that's yours. I think that's so brilliant. Now, whenever you were in the military, and you had this role in human intelligence, did you have a specific type of training that essentially taught you how to be a chameleon? Or is this something that was very intuitive to you where you were able to sort of massage yourself into different environments?
I say it all started in New York City, really, because I had to be a chameleon, when I was doing the stuff that I was doing, whether it was selling drugs or running cell phone scams. Like I couldn't be the same person. And I had to know how to read people. Survival depended on how well I was able to blend into environments and how well I was able to read people. And so that's where the foundation of this chameleon concept came from. And then even just in my home life, in order to keep my mom off my back, because I was doing a lot of crazy things and she didn't know about them, right? And
She's so cute, by the way. Your mom is adorable. I see her on Instagram doing push-ups and pull-ups, and she is so cute.
Trying to rewind the clock. She's doing a good job. It's rewinding the clock. Definitely my inspiration for sure. And I'll definitely pass on your love to her. So yeah, man, having to, my mom is a smart woman. She's always been a really smart woman. So I couldn't pull the wool over her eyes. So I had to be a really good actor. I had to be able to, act at school and in order to keep her off my back at home. And so that's where the foundation of it started. And then fast forward, when I got to actually these schools that were training me on human intelligence, that's where I learned the terminology behind what I was doing. Right. That's when I learned, okay, this is X. Like what you were doing when you were meeting with that drug dealer in the Bronx and you were, changing your demeanor slightly in order to not seem like you were intimidated. That's called this, you know what I mean? And so I was able to learn these terms and put these terms on these actions that I have been doing pretty much all my teenage life and even, adolescence. And so I put the terms to it, but also it was enhanced, more. And then when I got overseas, I was able to now take what I learned in school and to take what I learned in the streets, combine it, and then learn what worked better, what didn't work better, and try different things. So it was a process, in short.
That's cool. If it's okay with you, and I didn't test this before, so I'm gonna bring up screen share. You have a trailer for your film that's coming out tomorrow, but like I said, by the time this podcast comes out, it'll be out.
Yeah.
I would love to play that if that's okay with you, to give people a little teaser and to encourage them to go watch it, if that's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. But this trailer is actually a trailer for the book. We're actually going to drop like a teaser trailer tomorrow. But this.
Oh yeah, book trailer. I do see that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, even still, if I could share that,
Yeah,
that would be
absolutely.
okay.
I directed this, so I wrote and directed this as well.
That's awesome. Make sure the volume is up. Okay, I'm gonna play. Let me know if you can hear this. I know YouTube and Zoom can be a little bit weird sometimes. Okay, here we go. Can you hear it? Are you able to hear it? Okay.
Yeah, I can, yeah.
Okay, let me go back to the beginning real quick. All right, here we go.
When a mysterious former South African commando begins taking wealthy hostages all over the world, it appears at first to be a typical ransom gambit. However, it soon becomes clear that Lucas Van Groot is not only making a fortune with this hostage Inc. venture, but also manipulating worldwide stock markets and causing panic on Wall Street and the Federal Reserve. Enter Black Box, the CIA's most secret branch, so secret in fact that not even the director is fully privy to the unit's activities. Black Box is comprised of agents with incredible skills, chameleons who could transform into mirrors of characters, ghosts who are specialists in stealth and surveillance, wind agents who are transportation experts, and aberration agents whose specialty is deep cover for decades. Kali Kent, a Nigerian-born and New York-raised chameleon agent, becomes the point man in the hunt for Van Groot. However, it soon appears that the South African mastermind is after a much larger prize than simply ransom and stock market profits. Kali Kent and Black Box must stop Van Groot before he can execute a worldwide tragedy. But along the way, Kali will face the demons from his childhood and discover what it is that has made him the super spy and chameleon that he has become.
Well done. Oh my goodness. That's so cool. I love it. It has this playfulness whenever you're actually even reading the book, you know, let me get out of screen share. It's an intense story, but at the same time, it's like very entertaining, which I love. Like it keeps you roped in the whole time. And these characters are so well developed and they all have different backgrounds, and just seeing, you know, for me, I obviously have never been in intelligence. It's something that I don't get to, you know, I don't get to experience that ever in my life. And a lot of people who have been in that don't, you know, they're not privy to being able to talk about a lot of the things that they went through. So, but I think most of humanity, I feel like the intelligence, you know, CIA, these different covert operations, the, you know, even within the Navy SEALs, like how, what, you know, the direction that you went, there's things that I think humans, we're so curious about, like what actually goes on, you know? And so I love that your book takes us in and takes us on this adventure of something that most of us won't ever be able to experience in our life.
No, for sure. That was part of the goal. I'm glad. Who was your favorite character in the book besides Kali, outside of Kali?
And you did such a good job developing him. You know, Nevaeh, I liked also. I'm trying to think. Probably them two were my favorite. I just like Kali, he obviously was the main character, but he just did, you know, the way that you were able to develop him, it was really interesting, like being in his mind and getting to see him be a chameleon in all these different situations and people being like, who is this guy?
I'm glad you.
It was awesome. So I appreciate you, you know, taking these ideas out of your head and bringing them to life. It's really inspiring, Remi.
Yeah, it's a labor of love.
Yes, 100%. And so this isn't the only thing that you do. You know, I know that you're constantly building out projects. I'd love for you, maybe before, you know, we log off for today, if we want to talk about your clothing brand, your film company, you know, and some of the other projects that you work on that we want to, you know, encourage people to go check out and support.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm wearing one of my shirts now. Keh-jo, process is greater than outcome. And you know, we launched 2 years ago, and it was just a random idea. Let me just throw some slow, because this kind of started out because I was doing these motivational posts which were just quotes, and people just kept on saying, wow, that's awesome. Wow, it'd be cool to have that on the shirt. And so I was like, you know, what if I created a company where, you know, people were able to wear these motivational, inspirational, educational shirts, and then, you know, maybe they're walking down the street one day and somebody is going through a situation and they see a shirt that says process greater than outcome, and that speaks to them. And you know, when I wear my shirts at the airport, it's so cool because I'll see people like look at the sayings, and then like they won't say anything to me, but they'll just look, it catches their eye. And so that was the reason why I made the shirts, and everything that I do, I try to make sure that there's some type of impact. And so, yeah, we've gone on 2 years strong and been on TV shows, on SEAL Team. It's a different shirt has been on every season, I think, since season 3 or 4. And so, yeah, we've been crushing it there. And there's our website. We actually sell signed books on there as well, because we started doing bundles where people can buy a signed book and a shirt together. And yeah, it's been exciting to see it grow. And we're pushing out sales every single day. So that's been fun. So that's one thing I got going on. And then as far as my production company, there's a writer strike. I'm part of the WGA. And so it's been a writer strike, but my book Transform got picked up to be a movie, like a full-on movie with a major studio. I can't mention the studio just yet. And so I wrote the script before the writer strike, turned it into the studio, and I have to do rewrites on it. But, I got to wait until the strike lifts. But I say all that to say, that's going to be a movie that falls under my production company. And then there's, obviously the unexpected, the sequel is called Unexpected Redemption. And that's the sequel to the Unexpected. And I'm super excited about that film because it's a 2-hour film, and it takes place 5 years after the events of the short film. So it's all in the same universe, same timeline. So we open up on with Diego, still doing the stuff that he was doing, but he's more withered and he kind of wants out. And it's a thriller. There's more action in it because, again, I had to put the pill in the cake to get people to eat it, but it is super educational. And it's going to be a good one. It's going to be a really, really good one. So I'm excited about that. And we've been since September of last year, we've been working that film as far as like develop it and trying to raise money and all of this stuff. So it's been a hard journey, but hopefully after the writer strike lifts and the actor strike, we can get it going.
So no timeline on it, or do you have sort of a general timeline on when we could? Yeah. Whenever the strike.
We don't know when the strike's going to end. So, and then, depending on when the strike ends, I might have to, because I really want to direct Transform, my memoir. So I might have to do that first and put Unexpected Redemption on the back burner, so we'll see. We'll see.
So exciting. I cannot wait for that. I think that's going to be huge to wake people up to all of this, and to just get it out further and to have more support on your end. I can't imagine what that was like, getting doors shut on you, and this is such an important message. And like I said, nobody wants to cover it. We have these films that kind of gloss over it and do it in a way that's inauthentic to how it actually is. That's allowed to, be produced and manufactured in Hollywood and shown, but, a true to life depiction of these horrors that are happening everywhere. It's really sad that people are like, oh, I don't want to look at that. It's a little bit too much. It's, I don't even know, but it's awesome that you were able to skirt the lines, like you said, figure out a way to go around the red tape that you felt was around you, take matters into your own hand. And now people are scouting you and saying, gosh, what an awesome, idea. What a great short film that you made. Let's turn it into something bigger. I think that's so exciting. You really broke a boundary with that I don't think anybody else has been able to.
Thank you. It's been a process. It's been a process, that's for sure.
Oh man, yeah, years and years in the making. So all of us, I know even people listening, we can't thank you enough for that. And Remi, where are you at on social media if people want to connect with you?
Yeah, I'm just Remi Adeleke, RemiAdeleke. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, all the same. And yeah, you can get Chameleon wherever books are sold. Amazon, you have the Amazon page up wherever books are sold. And then there's my YouTube channel, which is where I'll be releasing, where the Unexpected is on the YouTube channel, Remi Adeleke, and the Chameleon short film will be on there tomorrow as well.
Awesome. I'm going to have all of that link below. So for everybody watching, please go support Remi, go follow him. When you go outside of the lines of what is normalized in mainstream, it doesn't get promoted a lot like how mainstream content does. So every follow, every like, every view, every share it really does go a long way for things that aren't conventional or that aren't looked at as conventional or aren't treated as conventional. So all of our support, you know, when we rally around people who are thinking outside the box and who create things outside the box, that goes such a far way. It really does. So I encourage you guys, please go buy Remi's book. It's on Audible. Also, like he said, he actually reads it. So if you're not the type of person that likes to read a physical book, but you have Audible, you can go ahead and check it out there too. Use one of your credits for it and listen to it in the car on your commute while you're getting ready in the morning. It's an awesome story and hopefully one of many. As Remi said, it sounds like it's going to be a series, which is really exciting too. Remi, is there any closing words that you want to say?
I was gonna say, yeah, you mentioned something also, if you could do it too, but you know, go on Amazon and give it 5 stars. It doesn't matter whether you bought on Amazon or not, because Amazon, they have this algorithm that pushes my sales page to potential buyers. So if somebody's buying another book, then Chameleon will show up like in the corner. But that only happens with the more 5-star reviews I have. You don't have to write a long review. You can just write, hey, look, great read. But if you want to write something longer, that's good too. But the most important thing is going on and giving 5 stars, because that's as important as buying a copy of the book, because it leads to more people getting exposed to it.
That's good to know. I know that it's always important to leave reviews. I didn't realize though that that can help bump up your, you know, your book in the algorithm. So everybody go leave 5 stars, go leave a nice review for Remi. You know, it's the least we can do. He does a lot of this for free. He's here donating his time to us today. So please go help do this favor for him. Go follow him, support him, buy his book, share it. It's an awesome book to give to a friend, super action packed. The characters are awesome. Just go support him. It goes a really far way. And for all of you guys listening, thank you so much for supporting me in this show. That means the world to me too. You know, I talk about a lot of stuff that also isn't mainstream. So all of your support means the world and also helps grow this platform also. So you guys, thank you so much for listening. God bless you. And we will see you next week.